From the
I don't know what to say. I'm just speechless.
To the
I can't believe it.
we see all sorts of life-changing moments at McKinney competitions. How would you react? Cars, houses, tech bundles and more from just £2 a ticket. No purchase necessary. For competitions, rules and conditions, see mckinneycompetitions.com.
I think with Wildfire, for me, it was started with the casting. It was like, oh, I was obsessed. I was like, how do I make it work? Why? What would happen if you put them together? And, you know, that was the driving force. She remembers, like, swimming one side of Dummy Lake and then the other. It occupying 2 different countries. And as a child, you know, trying to wrap your head around this invisible border, this invisible line. So I love the fact that we get to see 2 women that, especially the dancing, I don't think we have seen women dance like that. We're so used to a male gaze of women dancing for men. I knew Wildfire was going to be tough. I guess I just didn't realise what kind of tough, you know, when it came to what happened. You got to be so passionate about what you believe in, and because that film stays with you, it lives with you. You know, and if you don't believe in it, don't go near it. Do you know what I mean? And if you're looking for fame and fortune, you maybe look at a different area. Maybe be an influencer. You know.
It was 6 years in the making, but Cathy Brady's debut film, Wildfire, was well worth the wait. The critics are raving, and the awards and nominations are stacking up for the Newry writer and director and her leading actresses Nora-Jane Noone and Nika McGuigan. Nika sadly passed away in 2019, but this film is a tribute to her fantastic talent, and it's a wonderful legacy for her family to have. The film is about the consequences of repressed trauma, grief and sisterly love. It's set in a post-Brexit borderland Northern Ireland, a lot of it filmed in Newry. This is your host Elaine Ingram, and here's Cathy to tell us all about Wildfire.
Hi Cathy.
How you doing?
Can you hear me? Yeah?
I can hear you well. How are you?
Brilliant. How are you?
Good. I'm on this crazy whistle top tour, so it's bananas. So it's busy.
I know. That's what I was going to say to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, because I know you're on this magic carpet ride of madness.
Really is. I had no idea how intense it would be, but you know, I'm really grateful that we can do it. You know.
Yeah. I mean, the film, for our listeners, like the film Wildfire is being released in cinemas tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 3rd of September, and it's been getting rave reviews, and rightly so, everywhere. I mean, you won the IFTA for Best Director, and one of your actresses, Nika McGuigan, won Best Actress as well. So to tell us a little bit about the film first.
I mean, Wildfire really was. I mean, it really was an unusual journey. You know, we started that film with casting first, and I had worked with Nika and Nora-Jane separately. And, you know, I really was taken by just they had this incredible ability to be courageous in their vulnerability and really fierce. And I don't think that combination comes along that often. And I thought, what would happen if you put them together? So we began there. And in many ways, because I'm from borderland Northern Ireland, I wanted to bring the story home. And it was at home that the story started to take root, in that setting and that landscape with those people. And we were inspired by a real event that happened. 2 sisters who had a shared psychosis. Yeah. And there's a documentary footage of them that covers them walking along the middle of the M6 in England. They walk into oncoming traffic and survive. And that footage really, it really kind of took our breaths away, and it really startled us. And I guess we were kind of really shook up and wondering what would cause 2 sisters to behave like that, and how could you find yourself in the middle of the M6 and yet still survive after doing that. And that really, you know, started a long journey of 5 years of research and development. So we were building fact and fiction hand in hand. And I do think that is why Wildfire feels like a different film. And I think certainly that is why the performances are so astonishing from the 2 lead actresses, because it's 5 years, you know, they were crafting it. and really kind of constantly testing, is this authentic? Is this real? And that did meeting people who had experienced psychosis. It meant both of them spending some time in borderland Northern Ireland. And, their accents are incredible. Neither of them are from the border.
Yeah.
And it's so I think it's a very special film. And I think I'm really curious now that we're heading, like, we're getting a film out there, what an audience from the borderland makes of this film, because that's the real test.
Well, you're from Newry yourself, so yeah. So you grew up knowing, exactly what all this would feel like. So yeah, it is a test of what other people. But I mean, I was lucky to have seen the film. I'm really glad. I was meant to speak to you yesterday, and it turned out I was speaking to you today instead. And I'm really glad because I got to see the film last night, and it was. And I've seen this. Somebody said this, and this is the first thing that just came to my mind. It was absolutely mesmerizing. The performances from Nika and Nora-Jane were just incredible. But the story itself, I'm going to tell you now, I'm not going to lie, I was in tears at the end of it. But it was because it's such a moving story about broken families and just a broken community, and this aftermath of everything that people have gone, looking at Northern Ireland from a completely different perspective. But also because, I mean, I'm going to have you just mention because of the sad passing of Nika in 2019, and just the loss of such an incredible talent. I mean, you could see this girl had it all going for her.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a hard thing to put words on, but it's hard watching the film because she's so full of sheer talent and presence, and it's so lived in what she's doing, and that you kind of go, well, she clearly was crafting and she was about to set out a career for herself, which would have been a character-led actor, that maybe with the likes of Samantha Morton or Joaquin Phoenix, down the line, that she would have been going for those characters that took that level of complexity and physicality, because she was showing that with Kelly, that she was capable of those things.
Yeah, she really was. And the two of them worked so well together. And you mentioned there that you had your actresses before you had the film, which is a very unusual way to go about filmmaking. But you'd worked with both of them before in your shorts. I mean, you yourself are no stranger to awards because you seem to, everything you touch turns to gold. You won awards for your shorts before, and this is where you came. But you decided that you wanted to put these two girls together. Something in your head said, right, I want to make a film around them, which is that is an unusual way. I mean, I'm not a director, I don't know, but it seems like an unusual way to make a film. It
was absolutely gut instinct. I suppose if we were to talk about how things are probably traditionally done, you often go off and you write a treatment, then you write a script, and then in order to get your funding, you have, you attach your cast. Or maybe sometimes, it's not funding dependent, and you end up finding your cast maybe 6 weeks out, maybe in some cases a few weeks out, and then you'd be lucky, on a debut to maybe have 2 weeks rehearsal with your cast, and that's it. You're off and running. You make the film, and that's it. Whereas this is completely different, and I think it really holds space for actors being creators and maybe a different way of making films. Listen, there is other filmmakers that have made films in different ways. Obviously, there's the likes of Mike Leigh, the Dardenne brothers, everyone have crafted their own path. And I guess I was just following my own instincts on this. I wasn't copying anyone's method or process. I was constantly kind of referencing, what do the cast need? What do we need? And how do we find the tone? How do we figure out what the thematics is for this film? And, it did take time. It takes longer. If you're going to workshop things, often you get, your actors have to really step up, and it's not like rehearsal. They have to 100% commit to a truth, because you're mining that for story and mining that for character work. And if they somehow don't fully commit, it's like a half-baked story idea.
Yeah.
So, and then my job was to go away, and having looked at the workshop footage, having referenced it with real life interviews, then I have to kind of start to judge, okay, what's my authentic truth for this? What needs to fall away? Where do I keep driving the film? And for me, I feel like it was like this slow process of constantly chiseling and fine tuning what the film was.
Was there a lot of improvisation? Was there, that there's a particular scene, and when our listeners go and watch the film, which I'm sure they will, there's a particular scene in the bar, and it's a very intense scene. Was any of that improvised, or no? It was very choreographed.
There was not one moment of improvisation in the entire film, and I think it's because we'd done so much prep beforehand, but because the characters are so lived in, and how I like to approach performance, it has this energy that feels unpredictable, and I felt that was very important in terms of the tone of this film, that it's got this edge, this kind of nervousness, that the audience starts to sit in this discomfort. We go in that discomfort and exhilaration of the girls, but no, that scene was 100% scripted,
because it looked like it came. That just goes to show the credit of the two actors.
I think it's honestly, it's a credit to the performers as well, and we were always kind of searching for that authenticity, and this is the difference of actors just turning up on set 2 weeks before you shoot, and actors who were living it for 5 years. It's in them, and it feels like it comes from that moment rather than it coming from a script, even though it was from a script.
Yeah. And how does it feel now that it's out there and it's your baby is out there? How does it feel now? Like how difficult is it, like, to say, right, I know at the moment you're doing all the promotion for it and everything else, but it's there now. How does that feel?
I mean, I think me and Nora-Jane we've been trying to put words on it, and it's impossible because it literally feels like it's everything. And because it's so complicated, because Nika isn't with us, so there will always be that bittersweet element, and yet we want to shout about it from the rooftops. We're incredibly proud of what we all did together. That the fact that we didn't compromise that much when we made this film, we stuck to our guns, and we worked it in the way we wanted to, and we came out the other side. And when we had filmed the film, we knew we had something special. And then everything that happened in post-production, I guess it has complicated it, because we don't get to have that celebration together, the three of us. But then when I look further back and I go, okay, I remove myself from making the film and I look at it as a film, then, you get the nerves with, God, how's it going to be received? Have we hit on that nerve? The film is a hard watch, but will people watch it? I feel like it needs to be watched, but how do we get people to see it? And then these thoughts occupy your head then,
So that's the next step. And how hard is it to get a film, into the cinema, and to get, I know luckily the cinemas are open again, so that thankfully, it did come out at the right time.
We had pushed our schedule along. I think we were due to release in May, and it constantly got shifted, because I think this really it's a film to be seen on the big screen.
Absolutely, yes, it is.
Absolutely. I had people who had watched it virtually on their laptops and through headphones, and they were like, now that they've seen it in the cinema, they're like, it's completely different experience. And it is, because we went to such work to play with the psycho acoustics. So the film has a very grand scale in terms of how sound design and music is used, so that you feel hyper aware in certain moments, like when Kelly returns home, we open on this big ship, and it's that kind of hypnotic state of mind that she's in, like with the elements, because we wanted to create what it felt like to be on the early stages of psychosis. So it had to be very sensory, yet when the film falls away to very intimate private moments, it's quite big in its scale, because it's so intimate and tactile, it feels almost overwhelming. So you don't get that from sitting in front of a laptop in a way. So really, to have it in the cinemas, it felt like the best way for it to be launched publicly. So, hopefully people get the opportunity to go out, and if they feel like this is a film that they want to watch. But it's been interesting now, because, we've been traveling this film virtually for a year. I haven't really left the house until recently. But what really struck me in Nora-Jane is the conversations changing around the film. like, you know, we've had American and Canadian press, you know, during Toronto, and you know, similar with London, we had a lot of English journalists. But now we're meeting the Irish public, both north and south of the border. And the conversations we've been having with journalists, it's like night and day. It's like there's something so inbuilt and inherent that it's understood. And that has been really interesting, because it's not so much, we're not talking about in general terms. The conversations are, they're asking us, and they're really reflecting on their own experience of growing up maybe on the border or not understanding the border. So it's been really rewarding starting to feel like the film's landing, especially in Ireland.
Yeah, there definitely must be a difference in the American audiences and the Irish audiences, because there are things that we would understand that they just wouldn't. You know, there's a scene on the lake. I'm in the north, I'm in the south. That scene.
Yeah.
Like that's something that you kind of have to be from here to get, or not have it explained to you.
And again, like, you know, that moment itself came straight from Nika, because she spent her childhood in Clonus, you know, in her summers, and she hung out with her cousins, and, you know, she spent the majority of her life in England. But she would say when she came home for summers, she remembers like swimming one side of Dummy Lake and then the other, it occupying two different countries. And as a child, you know, trying to wrap your head around this invisible border, this invisible line. And I just thought it was such a powerful, everyday yet poetic moment, that I was like, that's what it means to live on the border. And it's everyday, and yet it's poetic, and yet it's complicated.
Yeah, and the things that I suppose when you grow up in borderland, you just take things as normal. And it's only when you look back on them, you know, things like probably having to be evacuated from the butter crane, or, do you know what I mean? I remember, I'm actually from Dublin, so I didn't grow up here. But I remember when I came up here at first, and it was in the late 90s. And I remember going to the shopping centre, and everybody was standing outside and the door was locked. And I was like, why is the door locked? And they were like, oh, it's a bomb scare. And I was like, why is everybody standing here? Why are they not moving? But it's sort of a taking for granted of things that is your normal. But then there's the post-traumatic stress of all of that comes probably when people reflect, when you're giving people a chance to reflect on things that they might have just accepted.
And I think this is an interesting time to start reflecting, especially with Brexit, and not taking for granted, you know, that peace is so important. And how do we protect that? How do we hold space for conversations to continue?
Yeah. And Brexit wasn't part of making this film. Brexit wasn't.
No. So we would have started this 7 years ago. And the reason obviously bringing it home was to do with, I'm from the border. But also because when we started to look at trauma, we realized there was this term called intergenerational trauma. And we realized that there's lots of studies in Northern Ireland specifically on intergenerational trauma within families and within communities. So that's kind of where our attention was sort of sitting, and exploring that within the family dynamic, within the community dynamic. And then as we were making it, Brexit became a thing, and then Brexit happened. And of course, like, in order for it to be set present there, we had to address it. But it was a nightmare, because for a long time we didn't know when Kelly crossed the border, was it going to be a hard border? Was it going to be a soft border? But one thing I do know, based on all the research I've been doing, it was like, we can't underestimate, you know, what wounds this might open for families who are still grieving and are still living under the shadow of the Troubles, you know, and what the Good Friday Agreement brought, you know, that sense of peace, but equally, like, prisoners being released back into communities, and communities had to get on for the sake of peace. And yet Brexit is kind of, you know, it's complicated.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now that, you know, in terms of with Brexit that has changed an awful lot and turned back the clock in some ways. Yeah. And if women feature, obviously, this is from the female perspective as well. You know, you're looking at, there's been an awful lot of films made about the Troubles in the past, you know, and Northern Ireland, always focusing on the male perspective and just the conflict perspective, but not from the women's point of view. And, you know, so it's a different take on things as well in that sense.
Definitely is. And I think, at the forefront of this film, it's not a troubles or political film. I actually think this is a film about, in a very universal sense, about family and about,
Yes.
the strength of love and grief. And I do think, but you can't not avoid the fact that the film does engage with the troubles because it's related to the family's past.
Exactly.
We can't separate where we're from. It's part of us. And I do think, this film does offer a different narrative to how we discuss the troubles, because we do see through these sisters specifically. And I think these women are very unique, because Kelly particularly, she doesn't want to play into what's expected of her. She doesn't want the cushy house. She doesn't want the cushy job. She wants to go against things, in fact, live outside the system. And in many ways, she's been free falling because she hasn't stability. And when she returns after being missing, I guess there's a part of her that's yearning to be at home, yearning to be with someone who knows her, because she's quite unsure of her own mind. And yet her sister has been living this repressed life. She's been doing all the things that you're meant to do. She's got married, she's got the job, but she's deeply, deeply unhappy. And it's to do with her own repressed emotions and to do with not facing some of the stuff that has happened to her in her life. Yet Kelly comes in, she's able to awaken something in her, which is terrifying for her. So I love the fact that we get to see two women, that especially the dance scene. I don't think we have seen women dance like that. We're so used to a male gaze of women dancing for men. These women they don't give a shit. They are dancing purely for themselves, and they're so vibrantly alive within their own moment that that's why the film feels like mesmerizing and hypnotic, I think, because it feels different and it feels very present in a different way. And as someone said at a screening last night, which I thought was fascinating in Belfast, was like, it was Justin McNulty, possibly from the SDLP. He said it's really powerful being a man from South Armagh, seeing this film, and it really resonates with me, but also to see a film that doesn't glorify the idea of the violent men, the violent history. There isn't a glorification here of men and their guns in any shape or form.
Yeah, no, there absolutely isn't. Yeah.
Get ready to shake up summer with the Get Active ABC Sunshine Fill programme for kids and families. Get set for land-based adventure at our summer schemes, or why not get adventurous and maybe get wet at our Splashtastic Water Sports summer programme. There are so many things to do, and all we need is you. See getactiveabc.com/summer for all the details.
Cathy, you yourself, how did you get into the directing gig, the filmmaking industry at all? How did it all start for you?
I was studying art originally, and I kind of thought that that's what I would do. And I was at the IADT, which also housed the National Film School in Ireland. So I was watching the film students out in the courtyard with their crane and all kind of working together as a collaboration. And there was me in my studio, doing my painting or photography by myself. And slowly but surely I started making friends with these guys. And I realized, God, I love the idea of, creating a piece of art together. And I remember turning around to two of the girls in my course and said, well, we make a film together. And we did. And it was the biggest load of crap. But that was the biggest turning point for me, because it was like someone turned on a switch. And I remember just laughing myself silly, going, oh my God, I felt like I was high, because I just kind of found something that collaboration and kind of working together as a unit to really bring something in your imagination out and make it physical. And it felt different to everything I'd been doing so far in fine art, which sometimes felt a wee bit intellectual heavy and a bit poncy.
Fine art.
Yeah. Whereas, with filmmaking, there's this, you can do that in filmmaking, of course, if you want. But I just felt there was so much more space to be collaborative and less intellectual, more gutsy, more visceral, and come from a different place, So that was really the starting point for me. And I unfortunately was in the wrong degree. So I left that degree. Well, I was meant to take a 1 year gap, and I ended up taking 2 year, and I just did production jobs, made teas and coffees on set kind of thing. But slowly but surely I started doing stills photography on set and understood how each of the departments worked. And then I went back to IDT and I said to them, listen, would I be able to transfer the remainder of my degree into the film course? And they said yes, but only if you can say you're going to be a producer. And of course, like, yeah, sure. So I went in, but then I decided I would make my own film, and that I would write it myself and I would direct it myself. So I ended up making Small Change, and never really looked back. I mean, it has been a very long road.
Because you won an IFTA for Small Change as well. You won.
Yeah, but I think we also got into Sundance, which, was just like mind-boggling for your first short. Like, and I, in a way, I thought, God, maybe this is a fluke. Do you know what I mean? It was in my first short, do you know what I mean? And I thought, oh shit, like, I didn't feel ready for the industry yet, even though like there had been good feedback. And then I went off and did a master's for 2 years in London in directing fiction at the National Film School.
And that was really where it all took off from there. I mean, you just found your calling, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that was like where it was my first time really working with international peers. I was working with filmmakers from all across the world, and and I met an amazing editor who I continue to still work with me. He edited Wildfire, and again, like, sound designer, so all these people I met and my masters I still continue to work with. So I felt like when I went to do my masters that everyone around me, the bar was so high that I was like, oh my God, but the conversations were so rich and the culture was so different that it really was this awakening of a sort.
And I suppose as well, when you're in that community, you find that you're just meeting the right people and people will help each other out and that kind of thing. So you're in there.
Yeah.
How hard is it to get a film made? This was your debut film and you'd done shorts before, but it must have been a different process, or a very difficult. Is it a difficult process to get the funding?
I mean, I think how we made this film was difficult. I wish I could give you more detail in terms of the finance, but like, unfortunately I didn't produce Wildfire, so I wouldn't have the details. But in terms of a director, like, getting funding for their first feature, like, I know a lot of scripts came in to me, so I could have made a feature earlier than this. It wouldn't have been the right feature, and it wasn't thematically something I was interested in. It wasn't my own writing. And that happened a few times where I was paired with writers and we'd go into funders and, we'd pitch a project. And what kept coming back, I remember I'd been into Film Force so many times with different writers and different outfits, with different production companies. And what kept coming back was like, but we can't see you in it. Or, but why do you want to tell this? Or, well, the scale doesn't feel right for you. And all this stuff that you're like, what does that all mean?
Yeah, what does that all mean? Yeah.
But, I can put my hand in my heart and say, Wildfire is all of me. It's not one part of that isn't me. How I want to make it, how I want to cast it. I was just really lucky to find producers who stayed with me on that journey, because it did take 5 years to get the financing in place. I think on the fourth year we thought we had enough money to go, and a line producer came over and costed up the film, and he's like, you've grossly underestimated how much this is going to cost. And we were short a lot of money, and we had to go back to find another financer. So, I mean, if you always see the opening credits of Wildfire, there's every financer under the sun. And, and it was a bet. It was a kind of, they had to take a bet, all of them, because it wasn't a straightforward film. We did have a script, but how it was made,
they were taking a gamble. Yeah.
They were taking a gamble, especially Screen Ireland. They were the first to come in. And, they embraced the idea for researcher and workshops and to take our time to get to a treatment before a script. But as the years went on, the approach to how you made the film got more and more traditional, and that became tedious at times. Like, not lying, but like draft after draft after draft can wear you down, and note after note after note from different financiers. But at the end of the day, like, it's public money.
Yeah.
And they have their obligation, and you have their obligation to answer that. So, and it's my debut, so I'm not in a position to go, well, fuck you and fuck your notes. Do you know what I mean? I have to I want to make the film, and sometimes.
Did you ever feel like giving up? Did you ever feel like this is just not going to ever happen?
No,
you
never.
So you would say, no matter what, just keep plugging away if you believe it.
Yeah. I think in terms of giving up, I think I've been really badly bruised, like by the process, and not just Wildfire. I mean, Can't Cope, Won't Cope, I found a very, very bruising process making that, for a number of reasons. The budget was very, very small. The schedule was ridiculous. I felt there was a lot of demands and a lot of personal demands on me as well. But I didn't know my boundaries at that stage either. I'm wiser now. I would push back a lot more. But I knew Wildfire was going to be tough. I guess it just didn't realize what kind of tough, when it came to what happened. But yeah, it's you got to be so passionate about what you believe in, and because that film stays with you, it lives with you, and if you don't believe in it, don't go near it. Do you know what I mean? And if you're looking for fame and fortune, you maybe look at a different area, maybe be an influencer.
Yeah, because if that fame and fortune, will, if it comes along, that's incidental to what you actually tried to do. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, because people can see through that, and people can see that something is genuine. Do you think
and people can see as well, like when someone's hopping on a bandwagon off an idea or a thing, or because it's trendy, let's make a film about this, but they've no insight. And that's not to say, listen, I didn't have any first-hand experience of psychosis or within my family, but I had to find my own way into that narrative. So that's what I would say, just to, and I think with Wildfire, for me, it was started with the casting. It was like, I was obsessed. I was like, how do I make it work? Why, what would happen if you put them together? And, that was the driving force.
Yeah. So they were your spark, that they were the two.
You have to keep fanning it.
Because you worked with them separately. Did they work in the same show together? They hadn't worked together before.
Never,
they just
never.
And you just spotted this. So that's the instinct of a director, which is just your job. And it must be hard when, I was just thinking there, when you're talking about trying to get things made and everything, it's kind of goes against the grain when you see somebody who's a creatives and then having to be getting funding and money and all, because it's kind of the opposite end of the scale. They don't necessarily marry together very well. So
it's a very difficult industry. It's a strange one, because even now we've made the film, you still need to stand by it, and you still need to promote it, and that's a whole different thing as well.
Yeah, so it's not, you'd rather be at home writing or doing something, probably.
I don't know, but there's a part of me that, like, I understand that it, the film needs to be communicated, and someone needs to present it in a sense. So it's like all these, like being a director and a filmmaker, it's not one thing.
Yeah. And do you think, are women becoming more? Are there more women directors coming along? Is it getting easier for women in the industry? Because we all know, like, that the film industry traditionally is very male dominated. Do you find that there are more women making things and getting things made, or do you think it makes a difference?
I'm noticing that, like, even like with the debuts that's coming through, that there is much more of an even mix. So I'm definitely noticing that a lot more of my peers, it's not just me and a group of guys. Do you know what I mean? So it is starting to be more represented, for sure. And with that, I do think we're seeing more female characters in leading roles. It's funny, do you know what? I remember some of the first reviews. I would have been like male reviews. I remember, like, some guys were like, it's kind of like, is it like Thelma and Louise? And I was like, Jesus Christ, I was so lazy, just because there's two women in a car and there's females. And I just thought, no, wait, but if you wait a moment, there is such a lack of female characters leading their own stories that they're pulling on examples that don't even suit the film.
Yeah.
So I think things are changing, things are opening up, and hopefully even with how Wildfire being made in a different way, it might allow someone else to turn around and go, I want to do something my own way, you know?
Yeah. And who would have influenced? Do you have any particular directors that would have been your influences that you?
I think I remember the Dardenne brothers. I was just blown away by like the infant, and you know, just the sheer, like, is it reality, is it real, and just there was a real visceral force to how the characters moved in their films. And I can't remember his name now, the Russian director. He did his first debut was The Return, and then he did oh my god, he's got this really Lefarian or something, Lefarian. Oh my god, my brain is fried. But he's an amazing Russian director. He somehow really subtly brings in social and political themes into his films, and I'm really impressed with how he uses landscape as well.
Yeah, that's
so he was a big reference.
Yeah, there's a lot of Newry in there.
Yeah,
speaking about landscape. Yeah. There's some beautiful shots of Ireland, and you have Slieve League at the end, which somebody mentioned last night, and made sure not to forget about that, which I've been to and is absolutely stunning. But yeah, there's a lot of Newry in there, and you know, people will recognise when they go to the cinema to see.
Absolutely.
Filming in Newry, there's a scene where there's been jumping on cars. Do you have to get the streets closed down and stuff like that, or were there a lot of curious heads looking at you up at the Flagstaff and down Hill Street?
Oh, I have to say the Newry Council were amazing. Newry Morning Council were great. The local police service were amazing. And we had a fantastic location manager who really managed all that, so everything felt like a breeze, but it actually was quite complicated.
Yeah. So what's next, Cathy, or are you just
I think if I can get to the end of this week. But then after that, I feel like after the film's out there and I've done all the press, I think I want to just lie down in a dark room for about a week.
Yeah.
And then I'm very excited with it. I've got a pitch for a new project that we're about to shop out for maybe quite an established writer. So that'll be interesting. So, you know, that'll be a different kind of a way of approaching the film, collaborating with a writer. So that's what's next.
So that's the next feature film. So you're on the feature film role now, and that's.
And listen, if the right TV came up, I would do some TV, but it has to be the right TV.
Yeah, because you've done that before as well. So I mean, you're no stranger to TV, but for this to be your debut film, it really is. It's in Newry now. Well, from tomorrow. From the weekend, yeah. That's
right. And Newry, Dundalk, Armagh.
Is it in Armagh?
I feel like it is. It's doing a good bit of the border. It turns out there was a woman there from Derry last night. She came all the way to Belfast because she couldn't see it in Derry, which is mad because Derry is such a cultural city. I was like, why isn't Derry showing the film? But anyway, no.
If it's not in Armagh, I interviewed the manager coincidentally last week. I interviewed the new general manager of the Omniplex in Armagh, and I told her. She said, if people request films, we'll put them in. And I said, well, I'm requesting.
Oh, fantastic!
So I requested it. So
amazing.
Like, I definitely watch out for that. And you're off to London tomorrow, are you?
Yeah. So we have the opening night in the Curzon. Tomorrow night in London, and then we do the Rio and then the Genesis, and then we go to Bristol, Glasgow, Birmingham, Liverpool, and Chester.
But it must be nice in Northern Ireland audiences. It must be nice.
That's where it counts. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but even the banter and even the things. There was something that was said that I just thought was you'd only somebody Irish would say. It was about the wolf when she said. Do wolves still exist? And she said, in the world. And I was like, well, that's something you'd only say. Only somebody Irish would say that.
I know, like they're just in the world.
In the world,
yeah.
I just love that line, yeah. But because it wasn't all. There were just the quirkiness of things that That
I think there is a thread of dark humor in the film.
Yeah.
And I feel like Irish audiences will probably get it more than any audiences, because I think the film is so intense in places that people don't don't quite know if they should laugh or not. But I think that's kind of, when life can get messy, that's kind of the knife edge we're often on. And sometimes it's so tense, you don't know whether you're going to laugh or cry. And I think Wildfire kind of has that messiness in it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I'll let you go, Cathy, because I know you're on a very tight schedule. And thanks a million for taking the
It's been lovely chatting with you, and so lovely.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Cathy.
All the best. Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. I urge you all to go to the cinema and see Wildfire, not just because it's an Irish film made by a local filmmaker, but because it really is hard to watch at times, but very, very good film. Remember to keep getting all of your news from Armagh Eye, and I hope you join us next time for our podcast.
From the
I don't know what to say. I'm just speechless.
to the,
I can't believe it. Can't believe it. Can't believe it.
we see all sorts of life-changing moments at McKinney Competitions. How would you react? Cars, houses, tech bundles and more from just £2 a ticket. No purchase necessary. For competitions, rules and conditions, see mckinneycompetitions.com.